Well, let's hop into kind of a current day question, right? So I would
Yeah.
imagine that the last year or so has really changed the market, right? Like, how do you evaluate a company that's got 70% of their footprint offline, or alternatively, how do you think about a business that's entirely direct to consumer? Obviously, they're facing some advantages. So I'd love to hear about the last year first,
Yep.
and then second, what I'd like to hear about is, like, now that a vaccine has come out, retail is kind of coming back to life a little bit. How has that changed things when it comes to the beauty M&A market?
Yep. Certainly. And I know both of those are very much on the top of my mind, on the top of our clients. We talk about these aspects every day. What I will say in particular about the COVID world, like many parts of the economy in other markets and industries, I think COVID really accelerated, in many cases, what was already happening. It took sort of business models that were perhaps antiquated and then, accelerated some of their struggles. Business models that were showing some disruption in digital had a content and community that it embraced, whether it was social or a set of consumers where they really spoke to that consumer with their brand. While in a COVID world, when you can't get an experience from a retailer, you're seeking out whether it's content and community online that basically showcases your brand and your reason to be, and your products, and why that consumer should love your brand and your products. And
Yeah, I would imagine if I was kind of a large corporate player and you're looking at your portfolio and so much of it is exposed to this risk, you're like, oh God, like, I've got to get some digital assets in here if I haven't been doing it already. So how are they thinking about it? Have things shifted at all? Because I think now it's like, maybe I can go out and buy these businesses that have really been struggling for the last year on the cheap, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe I can get a deal here now that everything's coming back online. Are you seeing that kind of interest?
So that's a very interesting thought, because generally the large beauty consolidators, they're desperate for growth. They are not necessarily going to go out and look to buy something on the cheap or buy a broken business and think they're going to fix it. That's a lot of expended energy for maybe a small return. That world where you roll up the sleeves, get your hands dirty, rebuild a management team, reinvent a brand. That's honestly the world of oftentimes private equity, where they can spend more time and attention. The strategics, and if you look at in sort of the last decade of what's happened, maybe taking a step back, and this has been what certainly I've benefited in my career. And it's just been an incredible industry to be a part of, because it's full of such passionate entrepreneurs. And despite a crowded market, right? If we all sort of sat back and we walked in an Ulta and we walked in a Sephora and we saw how crowded the shelf might be, we would think, why in the world do we need another skincare brand or another cosmetics brand? But to these entrepreneurs, they see a void, and they believe in that void so much, and they believe that the consumer needs their brand. It's really what I love about the industry is there's so much passion for what they want to do and what they want to bring to the market. And many times they invent an amazing set of products, and they don't even think about the distribution. They just know they're going to take this product, whether it's the back of their car, in a farmer's market, or Sephora or Ulta. And the opportunity for the inventors, going back, 15, 20 years ago, they probably knew that the department store wasn't an option. It was too expensive. That's where all the big boys and girls were. And really what happened is Sephora and Ulta, and oftentimes QVC, was there for them. And that's how you saw really the explosion of the indie brands. The indie brand, by definition, was independent of large company and independent of legacy distribution, which could have meant department store, or it could have meant food mass drug, in particular, drugstores, where that's where oftentimes traditional beauty was sold before, Walmart and Target. And really what happened over the past decade was Sephora and Ulta really became large enough to drive and deliver scale to these beauty brands. And then the large consolidators sat back and they said, wait a minute, we're under indexed to these high growth channels, and we need to step up and be a player. So, and that's a bit of a longer answer to your question, but really what happened is, or what happens, if you're the big consolidators, obviously Estee Lauder, Shiseido, L'Oreal, Unilever, you want to buy growth, and you want to go out and you want to buy that disruptive brand that was oftentimes a strong player in specialty beauty. And then it became a strong player in Instagram, social media, Facebook, which certainly that was NYX, right? NYX had traditional distribution, but they really found a new way to market their brand, a very efficient way to drive customer traffic to the retailer. Then, the next step of that is where we are today, where we're leveraging social media and a way of marketing and telling my story, but it's through new distribution. And that's obviously where, whether you're an investor in private equity or whether you're a consolidator, that's what you're really looking to. You're looking to that authentic story that has content, community, a two-way conversation, right? We talk a lot about conversation. Historically, conversation was one way. It was a big company telling you through the television to go buy my product.
Yep.
The wonderful part about social media is that was the advent of a two-way conversation. And
that's like, I don't know if you caught it, but in our last episode with Kevin Gould, right? So he's built businesses that went from 4 million to 75 million in the last 2 years. And the story that just I can't get off of is this, like they started out and he's like, at one point you have 0 fans on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's like, and then, you get 1. And he's like, what do you do with the 1? He's like, well, you send him a message saying like, hey, thanks so much for following us.
Yeah.
And he's like, and that turned into a massive direct sales channel for them. And that's exactly what you're talking about, which is like, you can now have this direct two-way conversation from a brand direct to your customer in a way that's just incredibly impactful for, brand loyalty, for, all these things that weren't available, when distribution was different.
Yeah, and when we were working on NYX originally, which I would say was probably the first to come to market that really understood the power of influencers. And early on, what did they do? They got the influencer, or they made the influencer feel like NYX loved them. They were often, struggling. They were in their bedroom, just sort of trying to figure this out themselves, and NYX made them feel loved, and it was a mutual connection that was authentic and powerful, and that the consumer really adopted because that influencer spoke to them authentically. And I know authentic is a word that gets certainly overused. I haven't thought of a better way to say it yet, so I guess we'll use it. But that's what's going on. I mean, if you find that influencer that speaks to you at a personal level, at an authentic level, then you're going to embrace whatever that brand he or her is talking about.